What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss 3 different tips or different ideas that you can use when rehabbing an ankle that should help you return to play faster. Now, the tips that I give you in this are all ones that I've used on myself, and I've used it a lot of my clients as well. And any of them who have gotten ankle injuries, I always give them these general ideas, and obviously I educate them around them as well a bit more and give them a program to work with it. But you can find that you can really reduce the time that you get back to play if you just follow these step by step, and obviously once you are working with a healthcare professional as well at the same time, who will keep you in line with what you're doing. Okay, so to look at it first, the first tip that I would look at is that you need to start early. Okay, now this is one that a lot of people, I think, skip out on, and what they do instead is they sprain an ankle and they ice it for the first day or first 2 days. I actually skip the ice altogether. I don't put any ice on it because ice can delay your return to play. It can slow it down, and it'll actually, because of using ice and because of the old protocol of that RICE protocol where it's rest, ice, compress, and elevate, people often take probably too many days before they start rehab because they're just focusing on the swelling itself. Now, the swelling isn't always indicative of where you are along the way, and what we're always looking at here is function and how function is playing a role. And if you can take care of, or if you can look at it from a functional side of it perspective, and what I mean by that is, can you run, can you jump, can you land, are you able to sidestep, can you do all these different movements comfortably without pain? And that's the goal, is to get back doing that. The goal is to return to running as soon as possible. But I think the other thing is that you need to really focus on what your sport entails, like what you actually have to do in that sport, and then you can start to plan your rehab around that. Because without having an end goal in mind, what you'll get the same rehab plan as a 80-year-old pensioner who has just stepped on a step wrong and sprained their ankle, and all they need to do is be able to walk from A to B, while if your sport is a contact sport, you'll have to be able to get around people. You'll have to be able to move yourself properly. If it's a long distance or an endurance-based sport, you're going to need to be able to put a lot of miles through the joint, so it needs to tolerate a lot. Okay, so that's why it does depend on your sport. And I think when you're looking at running and stuff, you obviously need to be able to tolerate a lot more, uphill, downhill, all that. And when you're looking at a field sport, it's more explosive, so it's like cutting, decelerating, accelerating, stuff like that. Okay, and that will really have an impact on your recovery and an impact on your rehab plan. So, as I was saying, the very first tip is I want you to start early. Now, I think if you look at it this way, an earlier start means an earlier return to play. And as I said, people take the first 2 days. That's your inflammatory phase in the healing process. But you can still do very small amounts. You can do little bits and pieces to help take swelling down. And I mean is, like, if you look at your ankle, there's like a little pump above your ankle in your calf, and it basically, when you move, the swelling gets put into that pump and it gets moved away. But if you're just sitting with your leg elevated and you're icing it, first off, you're constricting all the veins to the area, so you're not getting the essential markers that are associated with healing aren't getting to the injury in time, and then as a result, it's delaying the healing process. So that's how ice actually affects it a small bit more than helps it. So starting small is huge. How can you start small? Well, it could be that you're just getting out for a light walk. Now, once you have this assessed, let's say by a healthcare professional or a physio or whatever, and they have checked it and they said, okay, there's no fracture here, it's just an ankle sprain, you're probably looking at a grade 1 or grade 2 ankle sprain. Grade 3 is a small bit different, but in general, the same rules apply, but sometimes they need surgical intervention, or they warrant surgical intervention if you're looking to get back faster. So I think with that grade 3, you can still adhere to these principles, but at the same time it's a bit more structured than what you need to do with your physio. So and with anything that I say here, make sure you take it with a bit of common sense. You can't just go at things 100% because you heard it on a podcast. That's the other thing. This gives you ideas of what you can be doing on a day to day. So as I was saying, I suppose that leads on to that point of, you need to understand your body. You need to understand how far you can push, when you can push, and what you can do. And actually getting a proper diagnosis on that will help you out. Because if there is a little fracture there as well, like a hairline fracture, that's going to change it completely. So without getting that assessed and someone telling you that, then it's like, okay, right, I'd be a bit safe. I'd play on the side of caution first. Now, if it's something that you've sprained it a couple of times before and it's like a light sprain, then these really, really apply. Or if it's a grade 2 sprain, it's not too bad, but it's still pretty sore, these apply as well. So starting early is the most important thing, and starting small. It could be that you're doing range of motion exercises. It could be that when you're sitting down, you're raising your heels up. It could be that you try to walk on your toes once pain allows you to. It could be that you are taking or double stepping on the stairs when you're going up and down. Or it could be that you practice just going up and down the stairs. Simple things like that will go a long way in helping remove the inflammation, but then promote healing. And if you can incorporate those into it, or into your rehab or into your day-to-day, you'll get back a lot quicker. And I mean that I've seen people who've sprained their ankle get back in 5 to 7 days. Now that's a grade 1 obviously, but a grade 1 can be a niggly one, and it can really stick around as well. So you'll see them get back in 5 to 7 days. You see other people getting back in a lot quicker time. Now I've applied these type of principles to most ligaments in the body. ACL is the one that when it completely ruptures, I just say we can do these to a certain extent, but if you want to get surgery, we're going to have to start kind of from scratch again and build it up after that. So I've applied these same rules to like an MCL injury in the knee, where you're starting early and working on strength and coordination and kind of introducing return to play and stuff like that, understanding your body a bit more, and it does get you back to play a lot faster. So that's the first, early start, early return, and starting small is important. The next one then is working on strength, coordination and plyos. Now, when I look at these, okay, a lot of the strengthening exercises that I see people give for an ankle injury are just the most basic you could imagine, where you just put the resistance band around your foot and you push out, then you push in, then you push up and you push down. And I think that with that, a lot of those exercises that they could be, you could use your time better. Okay, and I think that we should get back into the gym as soon as possible, as soon as able, not as soon as possible, as soon as able, and start to work on your general or your basic movements again, your compounds like your squats, your lunges, your RDLs, deadlifts, stuff like that, to a certain extent. You're not going to just absolutely push through pain so it causes it to get worse, but there's certain levels that you can play with, and stiffness and that, sometimes you do need to push into stiffness a bit. So I would say to continue what you can in the gym once the body allows it and once your pain isn't really bad. With the gym, the good thing about it is the squats and lunges that you do, even if it's body weight, it's in that controlled environment. So it's actually, in a lot of times you can manage it, that you might only do like a half a squat or even a quarter squat, or a half a lunge and a quarter lunge, and you feel like, okay, that's all I can do for today. Well, then that's perfect. But that will promote recovery as well, as long as you're not overdoing it. Overdoing it is going to affect recovery. Finding the right amount is good. And doing these on a day-to-day, especially body weight, outside the gym, it's another way of speeding up that healing process. Okay? You need to think about building up tolerance in the joint again. So like walking is important. Running is obviously important. Things like skipping, or what I've used myself for ankle rehab, and I've given it to other people kind of later stages, is skipping. I think that's a huge one. It's like a base plyometric, and any basic plyometric low level that you can introduce will usually help to promote a whole lot. But you can promote the healing process. But what can happen is you can get a bit more swelling around the area as a result, because it's explosive and it's jumping. But I would say that you need to introduce base plyometrics as early as possible, where very little ones, not like big box jumps or anything like that, but it could be toe hops, it could be skipping, it could be light jogging. Okay, simple things like that can help it, and you'll find that your function then will improve a lot quicker. Now, this doesn't mean that day one you sprain it, you go home and you start skipping, because that's just going to cause you a lot of pain. You're looking at day 2, day 3 is when you start to introduce these, I guess, movements a bit more, when the initial inflammatory phase has cooled down. On the initial phase, you're probably best to just stick to basic body weight walking movements where you're walking around. I'd also look at like ankle range of motion, where you're just sitting down, you're rolling it. If you want to, you can massage up towards the calf to try and massage some of the swelling out of it, but you keep it simple. After that, then you really start introducing the gym work. You start pushing it and seeing where it is starting to kick up, where it's sore and where it's just tight. And you get a good idea of that, then you can really, really improve on it. So number 2 is working on strength, coordination and plyos. I should say to work on coordination a small bit more. The base plyometrics are excellent, where you're doing your skipping or you're doing toe hops. You could be doing lateral hops or a triple jump, but those are excellent for coordination. How you can progress that a small bit more, then just think of closing your eyes. Think of doing something simple like that. Now, you would be doing these extra exercises in line with a full program as well. I'm just giving you ideas here that you can start to incorporate a small bit more, but you still need that full rehab program to come right, and to really focus on getting it to the level that it was before. The third tip then, what I would say to help accelerate your ankle rehab, is that I would say you want to introduce return to play and running sooner rather than later. And this goes back to the same thing again. Too early, you're going to cause trouble. Too late, it's going to take you longer to get back. You want to try to keep your fitness up in some way. So that might be by going to the gym and doing a bit of anaerobic and aerobic activity on a bike. It could be going for a swim, whatever it is to keep your fitness level or cardiovascular fitness up. But actually introducing a small bit of running or a bit of jogging early on can help it. Now, it could be that you just jog from here to the door. You know, it could only be 5 or 10 meters at the very start, but it needs to be introduced soon, and you need to be getting back into play. If you're a footballer, you want to be getting back in and doing a few drills. I'm talking about Gaelic footballer now. Well, if you're a soccer player, it's a small bit different, because obviously you're going to be kicking off that foot and you need to be a bit more wary about it, okay? Because you don't want to, that's a very it's a high impact, even though it doesn't seem like it. But if you're talking about a joint that has a torn ligament and then you're kicking long distance, that's going to put a lot of stress on that ligament. And this is where it comes down to actually needing a healthcare professional to help you with this. But you need to be smart about it. It could be that you could be doing hand passing drills. If you're playing Gaelic, that you're just stepping in for a few hand passing drills, or that you're just doing this light jogging around in a circle, or you're just even standing in place to help people out. At least it keeps you in that while it's working. At the same time, once you're being smart and you're keeping it controlled, that you're out moving left to right, forward to back, working on deceleration, acceleration in those sessions without any contact, that's probably the next step. The pain will dictate your plan significantly. It's going to make the biggest difference on your plan. If you have a lot of pain, you'll have to pull back. If you have minimal pain, you can push on a small bit more. Okay, but it will dictate what you can do with your plan. And as I said, talking to somebody and kind of getting an idea of what is enough pain, or what's a pain that you should push through and what's a pain that you should pull back on is important, because there's different types of pain that indicate different things. And that's why I have to be careful with telling you just do this, just do that, just do this, because it'll work, because there's other things that could be kicking up as well. And if you're just working into those, there's a chance you could be making them a lot worse. Okay? But the goal is, as I said, return to running or return to play as soon as possible, as well as get back, get the fitness up, and kind of let the ankle tolerate all those different movements as early as possible. If you can do that, you'll see that you'll be back to a place that you were previously, and I would actually be aiming higher. A kind of a bonus tip, what I would throw in here at the end, is tip number 4, even though it's only 3 tips, but this is not really accelerating the rehab, this is kind of more preventing it, is once you've done that, keep on top of it for probably 4 weeks after, where you're doing a lot of the same exercises and a lot of the same movements, so that it's not just get back to play and I'm 100%. And you might not have to do them at the same level, but just doing them here and there, working on your eyes closed, jumping left to right, jumping up and down and landing, stuff like that, to kind of as a prehab mechanism is an excellent idea to keep these injuries at bay as the season goes on. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you out there. If anyone has any questions, please just send them on to me. And also, if you have sprained an ankle, or if you have just picked up an injury, reach out, send me a message. We can set up a consultation. As I've said before, I do long-term people with long-term injuries, and I take them on for a longer basis, or I do consultations with people who've just picked up an injury as well. So if that's you, reach out to me. You can either send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, or you can get in contact with me through Instagram or TikTok. They're the other easiest ways to do it. or to get in contact. But yeah, that's everything, guys, and girls, that I wanted to talk about today. If you wouldn't mind, I would love if you could rate this podcast on Spotify and iTunes and leave a comment even. It helps massively. I would also love if you could send this on to a friend or a teammate who's recently injured their ankle. It just helps with the promotion of it and gets it to the right people. And a lot of the time then, if you give me a bit of feedback on what I could have talked about a bit more, what you would be interested in, if I dived in a bit deeper on that topic, don't hesitate, just send it on to me on Instagram, and I'll definitely look at that for the next episode. Also, if you have any suggestions of a guest for me to get on, I'd love to hear them. I do get recommendations for guests all the time, and just if anyone says this would be a good fit, or you think they'd be a good fit, I don't really mind who they are. I'll check them out and see if I think it would be a good fit, and if it is, perfect. We'll get them on, and if you have any questions you want me to ask them, then you just send them on to me as well. But I think that is enough for today. It's a quick fire podcast, just getting it out to hopefully someone who is just recovering from an ankle injury will pick this up at the right time and they get back playing sooner rather than later. But that's all from me today, guys. Hope everyone else is doing well, and I will chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.